Alright.
Hello, everybody. How's it going? Ooh. This is our test podcast for our podcast animation upload. My name is Lost, and here I have my friend.
My name is Livid.
This is Livid, and we are, I guess, more or less. I had a podcast back in the day, and we're bringing it back, and we want to discuss
It's the
anime.
revival, baby.
The revival. We want to talk about anime, cartoons. Does anything animation related, because that's why it's called animation upload. It's not just Japanese cartoons. It can be French films. It can be Cartoon Network. It can be Disney. Whatever you guys grew up on. Anything from the 1900s to now. Anything that was animated. If we have to, we'll talk about the first cartoon that was chiseled in stone. If you want it, we'll do it.
That's nice.
I don't know if anything like that happens.
All you BC kids out there growing up with the stone chiselings.
Exactly. All your BC kids are gonna get this.
That's awesome.
So today for our test podcast, what we originally wanted to do was that we had an idea of shows we wanted to talk about, our movies, but we decided for our test podcast, let's do something different. But we ended up finding this amazing film that if this test podcast doesn't work, we'll still come back to it because it's a fucking phenomenal film, and I think our podcast will be great. This is a phenomenal film. It's one of those, like, I want to say it's a hidden gem, but here's the problem. Livid, when we get to the point, there is a lot of facts. This movie was used in a lot of films. This is not a hidden gem. We just slept on it.
Really?
This film is actually quite famous. Yes. And some of these, well, I wouldn't say quite famous. It's known. It's been used. You can call it a cult classic. This movie has appeared, we'll get to it, but it's appeared in Disney films. It's appeared in other things. A lot of these directors are famous, more or less. I got to do more things as we're going to figure that out. But a couple of them went on to make hit anime like Kite and other famous shit. We got to come back to Kite. It kind of blows my mind.
That'll definitely be like a later episode thing then.
Yeah.
Kite.
But I do want to bring up that segment when we get to one of these shorts. We'll talk about the short. It's a short that you and me were very interested in, and it just so happens the director of that short did work on like something bigger, and it somehow relates to Samuel L. Jackson. But we'll get to that when we get to that during this podcast.
All right.
Yes.
Now
this is that crazy.
I did not know anything like that.
Exactly. I think I'm just adding the Samuel L. Jackson to it, but it technically is related to like a 10th degree. But anywho, to start it out, we're talking about Robot Carnival, and I do have this synopsis up here. But I don't know if I want to send you the link, and if you want to read the storyline, because I do have up each segment and what the story is about for each segment, so we know that going in the future. But if you want to read the plot points, do you want to read the plot point?
Sure. Did you send it to me?
I will send it to you right now as we're talking.
All right.
I'll send it to you right now. When you open up, it's IMDb. When you go here, if you scroll down, it will say storyline, and you can. So I don't talk too much. You can read the storyline.
You're fine.
And what it says.
Let me think about this for a second, because I didn't know this was, I guess, not a hidden gem, because this wasn't something I had ever heard of or really seen before.
It's known. I wouldn't say it's a hidden gem, but it's known.
I feel like
it's apparently
clips of this are floating around somewhere. Like, this is a kind of movie where people use clips all over the place.
And it had a streamlined dub, which means it was somewhat popular because Streamline was probably at the time the best dubbing company for dubbing foreign films, as far as I can tell. Besides, because before that in the 70s and 80s we had, I forget what his name is. He's still famous in the anime nowadays. I don't know if he passed or not, but he did all the bathroom dubs, I like to call them, the ones that sound really horrible. And even in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, dubs on TV they weren't that great. They had a little bit of issues. Yeah. Some are fine.
Yeah, I think it was
but streamlined dubs were higher quality
back then.
Yeah, but the streamlined dubs were more higher quality. They were meant to be seen by people. As far as I know, I believe they were using airlines. As far as I know, that's how they were done. I'm not 100% sure on that fact.
I could see that. I mean, with a name like Streamline, it kind of makes sense to have it.
I only know that.
Play in airlines.
Yeah, because I only know that because of the Studio Ghibli film, which was the first film ever dubbed that wasn't Disney, was a film, and it was when you would go to, I think it was that or Kiki's, and you would watch it when you go to Japan. You'd be like, watch this movie. You like this movie? Well, this is Japan.
In-flight movie. It's a hidden gem to all these people in the 80s. It's not like they knew it.
Yeah, probably. Well, probably not, because I don't think Kiki's and all that stuff was technically famous until Disney grabbed it in like the 90s and started dubbing it, as far as I know. But besides that, yeah.
All right. Do you
Do you
want
wanna
me
read the
to read
synopsis?
off the storyline here?
Yes.
At least,
I hope this is the correct storyline. Because it says it's some guy, but as far as I know, this is what IMDb has
yeah.
as a synopsis.
Yeah, this is what IMDb says is the storyline. This is a Fantasia-like anthology of robots. The most noble are Presence, Deprive, and Nightmare. Nightmare is the story of an evil, cybernetic overlord that rises one night and unleashes its robotic servants. Deprive is a science fiction tale of a young girl who has been abducted by an invading army of robots. Wait, am I reading that right?
Yep.
Robots. And only a mysterious cyborg can help her. Presence is about a young toy maker who makes a beautiful female cyborg. When she becomes a bit too real, he destroys her, only to be haunted by her spirit for the rest of his life. This is written by somebody called Chuck Darkside Williamson. That's kind of awesome.
I think that's where the person that they got the synopsis from was probably from someone who
I
reviewed
won't
it or
lie,
whatnot.
I did not know she was a cyborg. I thought she was just a toy.
Okay, so yeah, we'll get into some of that stuff when we get down the road. But yeah, there's a few things in the storyline that like blew me because what I didn't get is a part when they talked about a girl who was abducted by invading robots. I had to sit there for a second and go, "What are you talking about?" And then I go, "Oh, I forgot that segment."
Yeah,
that one.
It's not. I think of all of the stories, it's weird that they say that this is one of the most noble, because
Is that one longer than I remember? Because I feel like that one's shorter. It is. I feel like that one's shorter than Clouds, or it's shorter than the other ones.
Clouds
and we will get through all the titles in a second.
Clouds went on. I won't lie.
Yeah. So if we go here. Okay, so there are some fun facts we'll get to before we get that. Let's tell us. We'll bring up all the segments.
Ooh.
So we have the directors, which I will not read them all because I am really bad at pronouncing things like that. But we have all the segments, and I guess there's segments that look like they're the same as others, but they were different directors. So in this list for IMDb, this isn't the correct order. We'll get to that correct order in a second. But we have the segment Coming Soon, See You Again. And then segment A Tale of Two Robots. That is one of the stories. Then we got Starlight Angel. Then we got Frankengear. Then we got Nightmare. And then we got Presence. We got Clouds. We got Deprive. And then we have the ending segment Coming Again, See You Again. Coming Soon, See You Again. I guess those are both like the same because I guess it's the same animation type thing. But the opening segment was done by Asako, and then ending was done by Katsuhiro. So two different directors, but I guess it was the same thing, the same segment. That includes the post-credit scene we'll talk about, which oddly enough wasn't a post-credit scene, but it was.
It was like the full ending of the movie, if you want to call it that.
It was for Japan. It's a post-credit scene. In the U.S., which we saw the U.S. dub, but from what I got here in facts, I don't know if we have the correct order because it has it here in the in some of the what do you call that? The alternate versions. They have the order from the Streamline dub and the Japanese version. They're two different orders, so they cut around and they move the films in different orders. But from what I can tell, we may or may not have seen the correct Japanese version. And I thought there was a third version because I went on YouTube to recheck because the movie's on YouTube by Retro Crush, which does retro anime. But then they have something wrong. But it's either them or IMDb. They have two things wrong because I thought there was a third version of the film because the film currently is owned by Discotek Media at the moment.
Yeah.
So Discotek has it, and I think what they did was they kept the dub that we watched from the 90s. But they just put everything in correct order. But we'll get to that in a second.
So how many versions are there? Just so we're clear.
I believe there is only two, and somebody's wrong because from what we have is the only difference between the YouTube one and the Streamline one. Because the YouTube one says this is right. This version of Robot Carnival is ordered as a Streamline Pictures release for US, not the original Japanese release. But what I read on IMDb and the facts between the Japanese and the English, they're pretty much the same, except there's a movie that's different. But we'll get to that in 1 second. Is there any points you want to ask or questions you want to make before we get into... I guess we'll talk about the alternate versions before we get into weird trivia.
The only thing I really want to add to that is there is interesting little bit of trivia here that shows up on the IMDb. If you want me to add that.
We can do that. You can talk about that when we get to it. But should we talk about the trivia, or do you want to talk about the alternate versions we saw first?
Let's talk about the alternate versions.
Okay. So what they have here on IMDb, they say the versions released in the United States by Streamline has the following difference compared to the Japanese release. So the dialogue segments and presence in A Tale of Two Robots was dubbed in English. Even the dialogue of John Jack Walkerson III, which I believe is the old man, right, that made the girl in that one, right? He was already in English. Yes. He was already spoken in English with Japanese side titles, but he was redubbed. So if we saw the dubbed version, they redubbed everything, but it seems like there was already English in it, but Streamline just made it all English. Only 2 segments had English. I don't think it mattered that we watched the dub, but it's kind of interesting. Then now we got this cool little fact. But so the order of the interior segments were shown like this for the film. In the Japanese version, it goes like this. It has Franken's gears is the first thing you see. That's the first thing we saw. So as far as I know, we are watching the Japanese version, but dubbed. We think Discotheque on Crunchyroll. That version is the version we saw. Then it goes Deprive is number 2. Number 3 is Presence. Number 4 is Starlight Angel. Number 5 is Cloud. Number 6 is A Tale of Two Robots. And number 7 is Nightmare in the streamlined version. The order was Franken's Gears, Starlight Angel, Cloud, Deprive, Presence, A Tale of Two Robots, and Nightmare. So, see how they're like...
Yeah, you can see where they switched around a couple of them.
But when we go over to the YouTube version, because this is the fact I want to get across, they have it as opening, Starlight Angel, Cloud, Deprive, Franken's Gears, Presence, A Tale of Two Robots, and then Chicken Man and Redneck or Nightmare, and an ending. So I want to say they do have the correct streamlined version, but we saw a dub that went back and just had it exactly like... I guess there is a third version, more or less. I guess Streamline... I guess Discotheque took the streamlined version, kept that dub, and then put it in Japanese order. That's how it is, but... What's weird is the one on YouTube that is in the streamlined version, it is the subbed version. So it is the American release, but no English. It's just a subbed version in America. And, yeah, that's that. That's kind of weird. I don't know why.
I was going to say, that's really weird.
But maybe they're wrong, and maybe from that film that we saw had Franken Gears at the beginning. The YouTube one, Franken Gears, is halfway through, like they say. Yeah. So I don't know if maybe IMDb is wrong, and maybe the English version had Franken Gears in the middle, and the first one is Starlight Angel, because that one is probably the most calm and like feels like an 80s thing. It's Starlight Angel is probably the most 80s calm, somewhat relaxing of an anime type thing. So people in America will probably like cool robot thing, but because all the other ones are fucking weird. But another alternate version about the alternate version. What were you gonna say?
Oh, sorry. I was just thinking. I think starting off with Franken Gears actually isn't like a bad idea. At least spectacally, like looking at it, it's an amazing animation and stuff. But then it's also like, of all the stories, I think it's probably one of the least interesting.
So it is. It's probably one of the shorter ones, and I can see how that probably was for the English version, why it doesn't draw you in. And that's probably why they had the Starlight first, and then the Franken Gears was like a little short thing to put in the middle, maybe. That's probably what I thought.
Maybe.
But another thing about the alternate versions, part of the credits were shown with the series of... So when it shows the credits, when the movie ends, it shows the credits before it shows the post-credit scene. It shows still shots of the Robot Carnival while it was in its glory days. When it shows it looking really good. Yeah. And it has Japanese titles, and it shows that great thing. Well, is that what we saw?
Yeah, I remember that, don't you?
Okay, because in the English version, or the streamlined version, it shows it with English titles on the side, but it was replaced with a series of character sketches, and it shows like sketches of the art in Japan and what the characters were sketched out to be. Pretty much like a sketchbook.
Yeah, that's how the English one. That version.
I believe we watched the Japanese version with just the English dub on it. Yeah. I think Discotheque got the rights in 2015 or whatever it was. And from there, it was just, we got the Japanese version with English. Because I didn't hear any Japanese in there, because the story, The Tale of Two Robots, that one's all in Japanese, I believe. But then the one with the robot girl that comes alive, I believe that one's is in English in
Yeah.
Japan, but they redubbed it anyway. So we just saw the Japanese. So we saw the correct way, but with a dub.
Yeah.
So that's how that was.
That's interesting.
But that is the alternate versions of the film we watched, which is more or less weird. But
and it's also the version that's on Crunchyroll. So
yeah, it's the correct version. So if you want to watch this film, guys, if you're interested in us talking about it, because when we do get to the point of us talking about it, we'll describe that we like it and what we thought about it. But more or less, I don't feel like we're gonna be spoiling anything. We'll try our best not to, but I just feel like it's a bunch of short films. It's something good to watch. It's 80s galore.
I think what'll happen is, even if we're talking about it, it'll be more interesting if you watch it yourself, because the way we are gonna talk about it is goofy. I personally, I think this whole movie is really cool, but also kind of fucking goofy.
Yeah, it's weird 80s, but I feel like they just had a budget and they got to do what they wanted to it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
What else? Anything else you want to talk about before we go talk about the films? I know we got trivia and then we got featured in. There is a section IMDb. This movie was featured in other films. It was featured in just a bunch of stuff. So we can talk about that, or we can do some weird, fun trivia about the film. What do you think?
I was gonna bring up the trivia that they have here on IMDb.
What do you got?
Which
Because I have it too.
Was pretty interesting. Apparently, in the Starlight Angel segment, you can see Akira and Tetsuo in the carnival.
Mm-hmm. I had to double check that. That was a fact I had to double check because of when it said Akira, I was like, okay, it's obviously Akira from Akira.
Yeah.
When I saw Tetsuo, I'm like, is it Tetsuo from Akira, or are these two different characters from something? Because Tetsuo is a film.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, there's a film called Tetsuo, and it's like this weird whatever. But I believe they're both in there, and I think I saw them because when I was watching, I said, why are there two like gang ass looking members from the 80s in there? But I don't know why they're exactly in there in the Starlight segment. It didn't state directly if I have here in the Starlight segment. I can double check, but as far as I know, the director is Hiyoshi Kitsuzune, and I don't know if he directed. He worked on Bubblegum Crisis, Relic Armor, Motor Veer, Mobile Suit Gundam, Zeta, old stuff. I don't think he did do a segment for Dual Matrix, Armageddon. I don't see him. He's an animator. I'm trying to see if he directed. Doesn't say he just has the animation department, and I don't see for director.
Yeah.
That's weird. He must have directed some because his art department, a writer. So on Robot Carnival, he wrote the Starlight Angel segment. That was his scenario. I'm guessing that was something he did. And
I'm a little busy.
yeah, so he worked on 4 things. And it doesn't look like he had anything to do with that, so maybe that was just a nod to the film, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Came out at the same time, because it doesn't look like he worked on it. Unless you guys know something I don't. As far as I know, it didn't look like he worked on that. But, they're in there, and it's weird. Yeah, that is probably one of the weird trivia facts.
I was going to say, because once I learned that, I was like, well, now I just want to go back through the film and look at the segment again, because I didn't notice. I don't know. How I just kind of skipped over him, I guess.
I just thought that was like one of the crazy things. Another trivia fact is, according to the soundtrack's liner notes, the Starlight Angel short was inspired by Steve Barron's direct music video, Aha, Take On Me. If anyone knows, this is a pencil sketch cartoon where it's like, take on me. Don't want to get copyrighted.
I don't want to.
But that's what Starlight Angel was based on. I could see that. It kind of has that concept in mind to it.
Yeah,
very
I think,
interesting.
especially with like the movement in the video, it sort of has a very similar vibe.
Yeah.
And
then another trivia fact, more or less, is the Nightmare segment, which I want to say is, if I remember correctly, where is the Nightmare segment? The Nightmare segment, do we have that on here? That's the last one. Yeah, I believe it's where the city's overrun by machines and turned into robots, right? Yeah, that segment on the thing is, it was influenced by the Night on Bald Mountain, the Disney Fantasia segment, and the segment featured in the film Sleepy Hollow from Disney. So that little, if you watch the film towards the end, there's a segment where a robot overlord is like doing all these crazy things, and it has a very unique art style and like movement. Apparently, it's based on Fantasia and Sleepy Hollow,
Yeah.
the adventures of
I think
Ichabod and Mr. Toad. And what's funny about that, if you know, can you guess how they're related?
which one, the Ichabod one or the
Yeah, the Ichabod and Mr. Toad. You know, the pretty much the Sleepy Hollow stuff.
related to the nightmare segment?
It's art style related.
Art style related. Oh, then I'm
You even
not
said it when we were
sure.
watching it.
Oh, did
You
I?
said it when we were watching it. Yeah, you're like the guy looks like this lanky looking little
Oh yeah,
skinny dude.
I said
Yeah,
you look
yeah.
goofy because yeah, you look like a wacky little guy.
The main villain in Sleepy Hollow towers over his minions as they dance below, which the robot is doing in that segment.
That's
And at
Bald
one point, the
Mountain.
villain scoops them up in his giant hand and drops them, which the giant thing does with all the robots. And the human in the scene looks a lot like Ichabod Crane. He's a goofy looking little, like
He is
lanky,
a
skinny
goofy
dude
guy.
with a huge hook nose and giant ears. So if you go back and watch the scene, it's pretty much
Yeah,
you can see it there.
very similar
Interesting.
to Ichabod in the.
Just like
the
Ichabod
Disney
does in his
movie.
film. Yeah, the chase between the robot and the main mimic is a chase between Ichabod and a headless horseman. It's the exact same type of style. So if you ever grew up watching that Disney film and you see him when he's getting chased, the film's kind of like that. He's getting chased by a robot.
Yeah.
But those are the trivia
Just
facts
replace
about
the
film.
headless horseman with a robot, and that's that's more or less right.
Yep. I couldn't find any. I tried to look for more trivia facts. Those were the three that I could see. But I do think the Akira and the Tetsuya thing is really fucking weird. To me, that is just that's crazy. But also when I said this movie was kind of famous, it's more or less like this movie, I guess, is known like at least in Hollywood to some degree, or somebody knows about it because it does have a decent high rating. People recommend it as a film to watch. But for you here, Livid, that you might find funny, is this movie is featured in Blank Check. Do you remember the Disney movie Blank Checks?
I have seen like a cover for it. I don't think I ever watched
It's a
it.
kid with glasses and a backpack on, and I believe he somehow steals checks or does something family related. It's a pretty somewhat well-known Disney film back in the 90s.
Yeah,
It was
1994.
popular. Yep. The virtual reality game first shown in one scene is actual footage of Frankengear's segment of the anime film. So they see a scene where he's playing this virtual reality game because he has a bunch of money, I believe. It's actually just a scene from Frankengear's.
That's
It's the robot
pretty
being
cool.
made.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yep. And in Masters of Fantasy Film, the anime filmmakers, which is a TV thing talking about some of the greatest animes of all time or something along that lines, it shows clips from this film, so it's like that. And then the movie is reviewed, which I believe is another podcast or some show segment of Anime Abandoned Robot Carnival. Somebody talked about it in 2016, so something like that. But then in the anthology of film, The Memory of Robot Carnival, a look back at the history of the classic anthology. It's discussed in and making and released of how the film was made. So there is a film out there that talks about how this film was made and created
Yeah.
and has a bunch of history about it. It's very interesting. But it is a documentary short, which is like 30 minutes, and it's got two directors talking about the film and how it was made. The film is referenced in AI, Artificial Intelligence 2001. They make a thing, I guess, about robots
That's
taking over.
interesting.
And Best of the Worst, High Voltage, Death Ball, and Space Mutiny, a TV episode of some television show. The video case is shown in the background of the guy's VHS collection. So it's there. It's references from Fantasia. It takes from it, but that's about all the history we have for Robot Carnival, more or less, and the orders and how things were different. But we saw the correct version, which I thought was kind of weird, but
Yeah.
there is that. So, what should we do now? Do you want to go in
I
and we
think-
just talk about each segment, and then we
Yeah.
discuss what we thought about that segment and everything?
Yeah. That sounds
All
good
right.
to
So
me.
I tried to find a synopsis of each segment. I was having trouble, but on the YouTube version by Retro Crush, they do have each segment and they tell us what the story is, and then we can discuss what we thought about it. Because I thought it was a very interesting film, but there is some things I had questions because we were watching this, and there was parts I was going, "What the fuck am I watching? What's the story behind this?" And I did have like maybe a minute in between of one segment where somebody was bugging me. I'm trying to watch the film, but I was like talking to them, and I was like, "Wait, what did I miss?" But this is going okay. So from here they're talking in the streamline order. So I guess we'll talk in that order too. But more or less, I think the only difference is the Frankengear thing. So if you want, I could just go down to the fifth one, which is Frankengear, and then we can just go in correct order, or we can just talk about the segments as they have them listed here. It's up to you.
I was thinking, do you want to do the order that we watched it?
Okay, so we just started. Okay, so the first segment is the opening.
Yeah.
It's a boy finds a small coming soon poster advertise the robot carnival and becomes frightened and agitated, and he freaks out, and then what he does is he runs through the village and he starts screaming at other people, this thing's coming, we shall be scared. And for the Japanese and English version, it's just like nonsense. It's like
it's not
Charlie Brown talking.
it's the adults in the Charlie Brown films, pretty much. It is that noise,
but
more or
a
less.
lot deeper.
Yeah, and
For the adults, it's way deeper, and then the kids probably the Charlie Brown teacher.
yeah, and it's also like they play these wacky ass sound effects while he's running around, and like they do. I swear to God, they literally do the Scooby Doo like
yeah.
thing
There
while he's
there is
running.
some there are scenes in that section where it's just it feels very cartoony. They take any sound they can. Again, the talking, if you really want to know, I want to say it's very close to Animal Crossing type talking.
It kind of is.
It's just very like.
Yeah. It's a little.
It's very that
deeper, and in Animal Crossing, at least the newer ones, when they're doing the like thing, they're still saying the words, like they're doing the inflections of the words, but they're not saying the words directly. It's really weird.
Yeah. And one point I wanted to make, when I saw the opening to this film, and it does correlate towards the ending of the film too for the segments, is I said this when I was watching it, and people can debate or tell me if they see a different something just as great, but I told Livid, I said this has to be the greatest opening segment to a film ever. And not in the sense of like, oh, a movie
amazing.
starts like The Dark Knight, where it starts and it's like, oh, it's a robbery, but then you find out all the people doing a robbery end up being one of them, ends up being the Joker. It's not that crazy.
Yeah.
It's just, it literally shows that segment, and then a giant ass robot carnival comes up, and it's a giant robot machine that spells out the title of the film, Robot Carnival, that you see on the title of the DVD, VHS, whatever. And it's just that, and it comes up with this blaring music, and everyone's like, oh, it's a beautiful robot carnival. It's amazing. It just runs through the fucking town, and then
Destroys
all the robots come out and plays all
yeah.
this music. Yeah, and it plays music, and it's like, this is beautiful, and look, these beautiful dancing dolls are coming down, but they're just bombs, and they're exploding, and
Yeah.
don't know exactly. They don't give us a understanding of how the robot carnival exists, but we'll get to later. But I think it has some correlation to one of the segments, which I think kind of somewhat might be a precursor to the actual film, but I'm not sure. It just has that same art style, more or less, I would say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that segment was done by Fukihima. They directed it. Very interesting segment. Cool cold open, and it was like a few minutes long, probably.
Yeah, it was not very long at all. I think the opening was like maybe 5 minutes at most. It was like a 3 to 5 minute opening.
Here it says 5 minutes and 14 seconds is the second segment pops up, so more or less that's what I believe it was.
Yeah.
But it was a cool segment. I thought it was very. I wasn't blown away by it. Like, for watching this movie, I was worried at first because I'm like, okay, for our test episode, we're gonna watch the 80s anime. Is it even good? Like, I love 80s animation, but we gotta admit there is some really like stuff that's not that great because it's just like this. But apparently they had a budget. They went out, made this amazing film, and I thought the opening was just fucking insane. I was like, okay, we're gonna be watching something good. This is very cult classic-y, but again,
Yeah, the opening was definitely like immediately like blow up in your face kind of animation, and then it's followed up by something that was just not that at all.
No, it was followed up by the quietest, softest, like almost still 80s as hell. Cause so the next segment that pops up is the Frankenstein's gear, the Frankengears.
Yeah, Frankengears.
A mad scientist tries to give life to his robot with lightning, just like Frankenstein. And we thought it was more Frankenstein-y-esque, but the music does start to get more Frankenstein-y, but it starts out more heavily electronic. And I was comparing it to Oingo Boingo.
Oingo. What?
Oingo. God, am I saying that correctly? Oingo Boingo. You know what I'm talking
Oingo
about?
Boingo.
Yeah, they did Weird Science. It's also God, who is he? He's the person that made the Simpsons opening.
Oingo.
Um,
Oh wait, that's like a real person. I thought you were just making a joke.
no, the Simpsons opening.
Oingo Boingo. That sounds awesome.
What is it? Who's
Oh, it's a
the
band.
theme
Yeah,
is
Oingo Boingo.
yeah, and it's led by Danny Elfman. It's his '80s techno band, and they did music for like a lot of films. He did Weird Science, fucking yeah. It's all
I can
that.
see that.
That's
Yeah.
Nightmare Before Christmas, all this stuff. But yeah, he does this thing. It's like you probably heard the song where it's like goose and geese and tots, like Weird Science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
That's
also
what
seen
it
the
sounded
movie
like.
Weird Science, and they
Yeah,
play that
that's
song
exactly.
a lot.
That's what it sounded like in that segment. But you got any points about the segment you thought was interesting?
I mean, the only thing I had in my notes was the wacky ass sound effects. That was a big one to me because that must be like a stock sound effect for the time or something because that is so weird.
What sound?
The sound effects of like him running and
Oh,
crashing
yeah.
into stuff. It was like literal Scooby-Doo noises. And then I also put the robot carnival is sponsored by colonialism because
Oh,
literally the thing that the carnival itself does is just immediately show up and destroy everything.
mm-hmm. So Livid made like notes as he's watching film because I was having trouble doing that, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna put some notes," and I thought it'd be funny, like to take these notes and see how they describe the film. So when we said the film first opened up with that giant, amazing robot carnival thing, he put down for notes wacky ass sound effects opening. That's what he put because the kid running and everything. He's like, "Whoa." And the other note he put robot carnival sponsored by colonialism. So that was his segment about. That's what he thought about the whole segment. It was
Yeah,
like,
I think I made.
and I was like, what the fuck?
I really made only like one or two bullet points for each of the like segments in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Like
I put
for the-
two for the opening, and then every other one has only like one or two.
Yeah. And then for the Frankenstein one, he put Frankenstein kills dad.
Because that's what it does.
Yeah, that's it.
It
Is the other note,
story-
is that from the same segment?
Is it from the
Or is that
what one?
The one after Frankenstein kills dad, or is that
No,
for the
that's
next segment?
the
Is that for the next segment?
that's the next one. I was a little confused on
Okay.
it, so I just put that. But
And
for the Frankenstein
So-
kills dad in Franken Gears, all it does is a lot of the animation is him trying to bring it to life, and then when it finally does, it sort of just immediately kills him.
mm-hmm.
Like it takes a moment and it looks at him, and it's sort of like you almost feel sentimental, like it
Yeah.
almost seems sentimental, and then it just kills him. So I was like, oh,
Yeah.
Frankenstein
Yeah.
kills dad.
That after when I saw that part, I was like, okay, that was kind of weird, and I'm like, is this film gonna like do something slightly different? Is
Yeah.
something gonna change?
You're like,
But
well,
then
luckily it doesn't. It's not like that the rest of the movie. It's like that one is the weird uncle of the
Yeah.
Thanksgiving of this movie.
I see that's why the English dub or the original dub they put it in the middle. I guess they wanted to start out with that Starlight one. Go, this one's so pretty. But yeah, but now I'm starting to have a recollection that's popping in my mind. So for the correct version, what we saw was the correct version. What was the next segment we saw after the Frankenstein? Do you remember?
It was the one where the princess gets kidnapped and the world is
See-
like taken over by robots or something.
Yeah. So what's weird about that is that is one's called is that the Deprived one? Which one is that?
It was on the IMDb. I'm not sure.
Okay, so on IMDb it says the order of the Japanese version was the original Japanese version was Frankengears Deprive. Presence was Deprived the one where she gets
Yes,
kidnapped.
it was Deprived.
Okay, so we did watch the Japanese version. Okay, I'm just
Yeah.
double checking because on the YouTube one, their second one was Starlight Angel, or Clouds or whatever. So that was that. Okay, so for the Deprive one
So
down here.
for Frankengears, it was silent. There is no talking, and then Deprive, I think, also was a silent movie.
There was vocal emotions as
Yeah.
far as I can describe when we get to it. But before I give you the synopsis of which one was that was Deprive, of what it tells us is about, you can guess what the film is about by Livid's notes right here. He put for this film, robot of a man or very manly robot. So, do you want to explain what you were thinking at the moment with those notes?
Have you ever seen the Muppet movie?
Yeah, is it?
The
Is
newer
it?
one where they have that
Yeah,
whole
Man
song
or
and
Muppet?
dance where they sing that. I
Where
thought
they-
of that because I genuinely wasn't sure if the guy was a robot that turned into a man or a man that turned into a robot. So the whole segment, I was just sitting there like, okay, he's a robot in one scene, but then he sort of just transforms into a guy at one point. Just for during the fight scene with like the big bad guy, he turns back into a robot and then back into a man afterwards. So I was like, okay, which one is he? I don't get it.
Right.
Is he a robot or is he a person?
Yeah.
Is he an android? What am I getting from this?
Well, it says here, an alien invasion of robot foot soldiers attack a city and kidnap a young girl. They don't explain why.
Mhm.
Her companion, an android. Okay, so he's an android. He's not a robot. He's an android. Is damaged in the process. Later, a mysterious man, because it shows you in the future. Well, it doesn't say it's in the future. They show in another segment. Later, a mysterious man with superhuman abilities is then seen fighting waves of alien robots.
Yep.
And you just see him doing that. But then, I guess, more or less, he gets to the point of, like, he is getting damaged more, so he turns into his android self. So I'm guessing that guy was the same android. But it doesn't tell you right away, so we're like, is this the past, the present? But then you realize, I guess he's trying to save the girl again, so he's going to save the girl, and you don't notice that until you see the necklace, because once he gets kidnapped, her necklace falls off, and he picks it up, in his dying body, and goes, I'm gonna save her, or whatnot. But yeah.
Body.
But you don't, if you miss 1 second of that, you're just like, why is this human guy going around fucking speed Sonic killing everyone, like, wah! You're like, what the fuck am I saying? Like,
Yeah.
and then you're like, oh, he's the android, and we didn't know he's an android. We just thought it was a robot fighting a robot. Pretty much how I took it, that beginning segment is the beginning of Shadow the Hedgehog. So if you're watching that short film going, this reminds me of something, it's Shadow the Hedgehog. It's him trying to save Maria, pretty much. Maria. I don't know why I made that comparison, but that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, it's Sonic 06. That's the comparison of the little segment there. That's awesome.
No, Sonic 06 is the one where Sonic kisses a woman, isn't it?
Yeah.
Shadow the Hedgehog is the one where he's got to save Maria, right? Yeah.
I don't know why.
Well, is he kidnapped in Sonic 06 too? Is that chick kidnapped? And I thought she just falls asleep and then...
Something happens.
She does Sleeping Beauty to Sonic, right? He has to make out with him, like, wake up, you furry son of a bitch. I'm joking. We're on a Sonic tangent now.
It's from
Yeah,
the
that was
correlation
Deprived, and
between
then-
the film and the.
What was the
Sonic
next
series.
segment? The next segment was Presence. Is Presence the
Yes.
one that we like?
That is yeah, I would say it's the one that it shows up the most if you look up Robot
movie?
Carnival on Google and
Mhm.
shit. Like it's
Yeah.
the most pictures of it. There's like a billion pictures of the cyborg girl. I'm gonna put her in quotes because that wasn't what I thought. I thought she was like another toy and he created her or something.
Okay, yeah. That's what I was thinking too. Okay then. So real quick, as I was getting to get that note, so the segment of Starlight Angel, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So we just talked about that one, right? Or no, that one's coming up, right?
Yeah, it comes right after Presence.
Okay, we'll talk about it when we get there. But I just figured out. So that director, because I was gonna talk about the Presence film we're about to talk about, and I was like, wait, let me look up the director because he's known for something. But then I double checked one director that I clicked on, and it said that he worked on a famous film too. So a lot of these directors have worked on big films. I guess I'll click on them as we go through the segments and see if they're known for anything.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, we've only seen. So we saw the Coming Soon. Said that director isn't known for too much. We just saw Frankengears, right?
We saw Frankengears. We talked about the fuck was it? Deprived.
Okay, so
we talked about Deprived.
So this director too. Okay, they did not direct, but okay. So the person that did Frankengears, they're known for Animatrix. They did a segment for Animatrix, and they worked on Akira, and they worked on Memories, which is another anthology film, I believe. And they worked in the animation department for Akira under the title as Koji Morita, which I want to say is. Yes, one of the like the animators. Okay, just to making sure I was double checking something. And then we talked about that one, the opening segment. Nothing happened. Now we're going to talk about Presents, which I believe to be more or less
one of the best ones. Yeah.
I want to say was one of the best ones. But before we tell you what the film's about, this is what he put down. Livid described his film as this. This is hard to read, guys. Okay, this film. Presents is about good soup. Do you want to read that?
Yeah, I put down good soup, and soup guy is sus. The reason why I didn't know he was a toy maker, and I guess his occupation is toy maker, but at the very beginning of the story, right after they do this weird segment of children kicking the head off of a robot guy,
which they don't explain.
They never really go into that.
They just take the guy's head and throw it, and then the guy's like, "Oh no!" And then it cuts.
And then it cuts to this guy in his home with his wife and daughter, and he just goes, "Good soup, good soup." And then he said it was like cold or something, but slightly
He's like, "It's not as warm
warmer.
as it used to be. It's not as warm as it used to be, honey. Is something wrong? Do you want to explain something?" And before he has time to explain. Creepy little girl runs up, right? Creepy little girl goes, "Daddy,
daughter,
I'm going to school." And for a second there, I thought his daughter was a robot. I was like, "Oh, obviously his daughter was a robot," but apparently not. She just looks like a robot because the art style is fucking weird and amazing. And then what happens next?
After that, after he leaves his home, he goes to work, and his work is nothing. He doesn't fucking have a job. He goes to work, but what he ends up doing is just sitting at a pier and throwing screws into a lake. And then after that, he just walks away into the woods where
he gets yelled at, right?
Well, yeah, he gets yelled at by a flying alarm clock.
That tells him to get back to work.
Yeah.
So I think he does go back to work. It's pretty much in that segment he's talking about how he just wants something more simple. He doesn't want all this big. I guess he just doesn't like all the making so much fucking toys or electronics or whatever the hell that he makes. And then because it does show him when he's walking to work, he looks over and sees a trash can full of robots, and he's like, "Oh, there's a shit ton of robots." And they're like, I guess more or less he wanted something more simple or whatnot, and he just wanted more relaxing. And then he tries to gain that relaxation by working on stuff on his own, I guess.
He sort of picks up his own little hobby. And
workshop.
His hobby is creating young women, apparently. He's a toy maker. He makes toys in his off time, but also I guess he was like, my masterpiece will be this young girl.
I think what it is, I think he works for a factory that makes toys, or they might even make robots for all we know.
Yeah,
but
they're
I
never
think he
clear.
likes to make. He likes to make toys. I do think he likes to make toys.
Yeah.
But I think he ends up having to make robots or not. But then he has his little workshop in the back. I want to say it's in the back of his house, but no. I think they lived in the city.
It was literally in the woods. It was just some little cottage that was sitting in the woods by itself.
But he ends up more or less buying a house out there at some point because it shows him later on with it.
Yeah, in
near
the beginning,
cottage, right?
He lives in the city, and he commutes from there to wherever he works. But then at the end of the film, it's him and his wife, and they live on their own, literally in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. I know we're talking a lot about this, but I honestly at one point I was like, this might be the best part of this whole movie.
I
Is
think
that
it is. I think
segment
it's
in general.
definitely a top contender.
It's really good. Besides good soup, and soup guy is sus, but he goes into his little workshop more or less after it cuts from him getting yelled at work or whatever it is that he's doing by the pier. He's in there, and I guess he's working on toys, but then he goes over and he starts messing with this doll-looking thing, which ends up being this
Yeah.
robotic girl, which he brings to life,
Yeah.
more or less, because he's just sitting there talking as he turns her head and looks at him, and it says something. What does he say? He pretty much just specifies she wants something important, like
She said she
wants to
wanted to
live.
feel loved and wants to feel love. And in that
he
moment, he
said-
was like, "What the fuck?
Why did you
You're
say
not,
that?
You're
I
not
didn't-
yeah, you're not supposed to do that." He said, I didn't
Yeah.
program you to say that."
Yeah, you're a robot. Pretty much you don't have to care about love. He goes, but I want to feel something more or less. And he's like, well, that's not your job. And I don't know if they show over time what's going on, but they do. That happens, and then they show her still in the room. I don't know if it's showing different time segments, more or less, but it shows like she's in a different part of the room or whatever, talking to him, and he's sitting at his like workbench or whatever,
Yeah.
and he's like working on toys or whatever, and then I guess he really wanted attention, so she runs up and she grabs him or hugs him more or less, but it shows his face and he has his shocked face of fear. And for a second there, I said, "Did he just kill her creator?" Like I thought they were
You
going
thought
down
it
this-
was another Frankenstein kills dad moment.
or like iRobot, things like that, where the robots get sent in and they want freedom, so they kill or whatever. But then he freaks out, and then you hear a loud bam and glass shatter, because there's a mirror he was looking at, and I guess he slams her into the mirror,
Yeah.
and it shatters, and she's
They don't
just laying there in
specifically
pain.
show it happening, but you can infer
You
it
know,
happening.
she gets back, and she goes to talk or say something, but then it looks like she's bleeding. But I think that's her oil, or whatever she runs off of, is leaking out of her mouth.
Yeah, because it's
And
not
then it's
red.
just-
It's like a weird blackish
Yeah.
green color.
I just say you guys should watch it. It's just an amazing film, more or less. Even just watching that segment is
Yeah,
the greatest thing ever. But
I
from
would
there, it
definitely
shows him
say
with a
that
wrench.
segment is one of the ones that you should sit through and just watch.
Yeah,
I feel like I might go after we're done here, rewatch it, or at least
Yeah, I
rewatch
might
that
be down.
segment because I want to like
it was good.
I
It was
want to
creepy,
watch
but
it
it's
again
good.
now that I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I know I'm talking about it. I love that segment, but it shows him
Exactly.
holding a wrench, and more or less, I believe he like I guess strikes her down, kills her, whatever you
kills
want
her,
to
yeah.
whatever you want to say it is, and then it goes on to show him old, and he's sitting there as an old man, and his family comes out of the house. His daughter,
Yeah,
who looks less robotic and less creepy,
she's an
and
adult.
I guess he
Yeah.
has a granddaughter, and the granddaughter runs up and says, "Honey," I says, "Grandpa, will you make me a toy? I really
Honey.
want you to make me a toy." Yeah, he says, it was funny. We laughed at it because he said, "Will you make me a toy? Will you make me a toy?" And then what did he say to her? He said, he said like, "You be a good girl now," or whatever. Like he didn't even
Yeah.
respond to making her a toy.
Yeah, he said
They
if you're
leave.
good to your mom or something like that, I'll make you a
Yeah.
toy or something like that.
I think he just said, "Be good to your mother," or whatever,
Yeah.
whatnot. But then they leave, and then he's just sitting there on his porch, and it is a segment of like a minute of him just sitting there on that porch, nothing happening. But then he starts to freak out, and it shows I guess more or less the robot girl that he.
Yeah, that he
That he
killed.
attacked?
I guess in this moment he's being haunted by what he did, because
To her.
I mean she basically was sentient, and then he killed her, so he now has to live with that that guilt, of having
Yeah.
murdered like a living creature, more or less.
Yeah. I just realized we didn't talk about what the actual synopsis is. We just talked about his soup thing. But what it says here is, a man develops an assassin with a geonoid he has been secretly constructing in an attempt to compensate for his lack of any close relationship with his wife and family. So
Yeah.
that was kind of why he's sitting at the water, saying he just wanted something more or less.
He doesn't.
'cause
In the film, he does not really have a close connection to his wife at all.
Mhm.
It seems like he has some sort of connection to his daughter, but not like a
More or less.
not like a.
I think he's just a newspaper father that goes to work, and then I guess
Yeah.
he wanted something else, and he created a robot for that. But then he freaks out, thinking this is bad, I can't have her or not, and then obviously kills her. And then as an old man, he has to more or less deal with his guilt for that,
Yeah.
and more or less. But for this one, I don't think I want to give away the ending. He just has to deal with that, and I'll just say multiple times he runs into the robot as he's an old man, and he has to deal with it. I recommend you guys watch it. It's the greatest segment. We're running along here, so I do want to get into the other segments, but
Alright.
it's just amazing. I just think it's phenomenal, and
Yeah.
it's probably the best segment. But yeah, Presence is if I look here, where is it? Presence is directed by Yuma Atsu, who is a lot of these people worked on Akira. Apparently, they worked on Akira. They worked on a bunch of other stuff. He worked on Grave of Fireflies too in the animation department, but more or less
That's
that.
it's a really good movie, but it's also just tragic.
Yeah,
really
it looks
fucking
like
tragic.
as a director, has he done anything? Okay, he did direct Kite. Okay, so this is the one I want to talk about. For the segment, this is the famous director. He went on to make Kite, a mini series that's famous from the late '90s, I guess you would say, which was one of those very violent, like disturbing animes, but it was so bad. It is considered under the category as hentai, but it's like one of those things that like it has a story. There's a segment. It's like, it's like it's a story, but there's
Trying to,
I guess more or less the R
trying to
words
make
in
us
there,
review
bad
a
things.
hentai?
It's more or less it is, but it has been remastered where they cut out, like there's a version where they cut out all that stuff when it was released in America. There was the hentai version, then there's the director making a version without all that horrible stuff in there, but the horrible stuff's happening.
Yeah. It still
He went,
exists.
yeah. And this film
What
Kite
the
that he made, which is super huge, he's pretty famous for that, and it was turned into a live action, which I have yet to see, but I hear it was one of the good animations, more or less, turned live action.
Yeah.
It was made in 2014, and Samuel L. Jackson wanted to work on it because, fun fact, Samuel L. Jackson loves anime.
He does.
He's even
Hentai
voicing
too.
anime. But that's a little fact that I wanted to bring up, is that director went on to make Kite, and then he made the sequel, Kite Liberator, and I think he went on to do, he has a segment, Animatrix, all that stuff, just like,
Right.
all that fun little stuff.
Okay.
Anywho, our next segment, what happens next? Next is Starlight Angel, which I want to almost say is the softest in this, more or less, would you say? I would say it's the softest of the bunch. How would you, well, you described it as robot loves teen girl, robot is a real boy. Would you like to break that down?
I guess I didn't know that they weren't fake robots.
Yeah, he's...
In a lot of the other stories, the robots are completely real. But yeah, at this amusement park, I guess they're just regular people dressed up as robots, which I didn't fucking know. And I assumed it was like all the other stories where it was like, oh yeah, no, that's just a robot. So yeah, I put robot loves teen girl because she loses a little. What are those little necklaces with a photo in them?
She has a little necklace that she drops.
Yeah,
drops as he's running.
He goes to find her and stuff, and he kind of chases her around in that, and
yeah,
you can tell that he might like her. And then the reason I put robot is a real boy is because at the end of it they reveal that it's like he takes off the robot helmet and stuff, and he's just a normal guy. I was like, oh,
well, he
wait a
take
minute.
It off. I think it breaks off more or less, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure. But what it says here is 2 teenage girls get in trouble at a robot-themed amusement park. One of the girls finds that her boyfriend is now going out with her friend.
Yep.
They don't specify that. I thought that was her ex or whatever. But they were both dating the same guy.
Oh, really?
That
wasn't specified at all. I just thought it was like an ex.
An ex, yeah.
Now got with
but
her
if
friend,
you notice
which,
on her pen, her necklace has the guy's face on it, just so you know.
I did notice
so,
that when it fell on the ground.
So I guess that means they were still together, or they thought they were. But
That's
running away in
weird.
tears, he finds her way to a virtual reality ride. And she's in a virtual reality ride, freaking out, but then the guy who worked at the carnival is trying to help her, but she's freaking out in a virtual reality ride because it's freaking her out, and he's trying to, like, protect her in this ride or whatnot. And in doing so, I think he gets hurt on the ride, and that's what makes his helmet come off. She sees him. It's cool. They become friends, and then, they go to
They go out or whatever.
probably.
Well,
But yeah, that's
the thing that confused me was because during the virtual reality ride thing, she ran away in tears and she goes on the ride.
hmm
She was almost forced on. Actually, no, she was forced onto it. The robot arms picked her up and sat her in the seat for the ride.
I
And
think
then,
she just ran away in tears. She accidentally ended up on the ride. It was like
yeah,
she went into like a musical chairs type room and it was like, oops, I
yeah.
accidentally ended up in here.
And then the thing was, during the ride, it isn't really clear that it's like a virtual reality. It's sort of like immediately like they launch into the air and she's just flying around. And then she while she's flying around in the air, shoots lasers from her eyes to turn people into robots.
Does she do that?
Yeah, yeah. Do you not
I,
remember? She looks around, she
that
shoots like this
segment was
yellow
weird.
beam, and
That segment was weird to me.
yeah, it just makes robots. And
I
then
don't know.
she's flying around with a bunch of robots and stuff, and then I guess I don't know, she got sad again. Like she was happy
Mm,
for the moment and then got sad again. Uh I remember. Yeah, the robot guy tried helping her out and giving her back the like amulet or whatever. And
gotcha.
she freaked out and everything, and then a giant robot monster thing starts attacking. I still don't get that scene, but then yeah, the robot guy helps her fight it off, I guess. And it's
Yeah.
revealed that it's like, oh, it's just some dude in a fucking helmet or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's just a guy that works at the carnival. It's probably the least real robotic, but everything in these segments have to do with robots, and that was probably the most lighthearted, and that's probably why it starts out. The English version is that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is Starlight, which, if I remember, let's see here. They are known for nothing too crazy. They worked on a lot of crap. I don't think they directed too much stuff, so yeah, that's what they did. Yeah, it looks like they directed that segment. They have worked on other things in the 90s. Nothing. They were the key animator on the Lord Slug movie for Dragon Ball Z. If that means anything.
Lord Slug movie for Dragon Ball Z.
That's the giant one where he's just a
What
giant
the
slug-looking motherfucker. Yeah, it's one of the movies. And yeah, that's what he worked on. I don't think he did anything else too crazy. That's what that director did. That was that. And then what was our next segment? We went on to have clouds.
Clouds.
And the best way to describe clouds is, I don't want to be mean to clouds. I think clouds is fucking amazing. But the best
The
way
animation is really amazing.
to describe clouds is how he described it. Livid described it in his notes. He said this out loud, and I was watching it. And when he said it, I just started dying laughing. And I'm gonna laugh again if we talk about it. But it's called cloud. He just say it.
Rorschach test.
It's a cloud Rorschach test. That's his first note. Is a cloud Rorschach test. And then it was, at the end, he put it was about nukes, which I did not get that vibe. But okay,
You didn't.
maybe I
did
wasn't
you
paying it.
not see the part where nukes are literally in the
Okay.
film?
Yeah, I think I remember now, but I
Okay.
just the whole time watching it, I was like sitting there going like, this is a Rorschach test. But here for the notes, okay, what it says, the actual film is about. Where's clouds?
Yeah,
Come
tell me
on,
what the
Clouds.
film is about, because it's silent and it's.
It's a Rorschach film, guys. It's
It really
the
is.
best way to describe it is when you're looking up and you see clouds becoming something. It's a guy walking on pencil art, and he behind him
Yeah.
is the clouds doing shit. And
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't put your other note because there was other notes I thought you were gonna put down. He was like, "Yo, this guy likes
Young
underage
girls.
people," because it was showing
Yeah.
like the angels, like in the Bible, it was showing like little
It
angels
showed
and
it showed angels
naked.
and that, but at one point they weren't angels. They were just people.
They were just like little kids,
Yeah.
more child. Maybe they weren't. Maybe it was the art style, but
I
it
mean,
was
I
weird.
guess I'm not too surprised because it is just like a little boy, like
Yeah. Do we
robot
have
boy?
the synopsis here for Clouds? I don't see it on here. It says director, scenario, background. Oh, segment 3, Clouds. A lonely robot walked through time and the evolution of man.
Really?
Oh,
What?
really?
That
Okay.
okay? Yeah, not the
Maybe.
not the
Not
vibe
what I
picked
remember,
up, I
but
guess. That's weird.
Maybe it was showing humans, and then every time we saw a human disappear in the clouds, they were dying. I guess it just shows the End of Man, and that was a robot. Yeah, that robot very much reminded
Yeah.
me of like an Astro Boy type
Kind of does
type
remind you of
anime.
Astro Boy, huh?
Yeah. So in Clouds is directed by uh Manabu Oshiashi, and they okay. This answers a lot of my questions why it looks like that. They were one of the lead animation directors on Metropolis, which is a Ozu Tekama film
Ooh.
that his son directed, and probably one of my favorite anime films that I like just because I owned it.
Yeah.
I rented it from some place, never returned it, and I just kept it. I still have it. It doesn't run very good, but yeah, that they worked on that. That's very
Is it on
interesting.
VHS or DVD or what?
Oh, this is a DVD. It's just a stolen
That's
DVD.
nice.
They also directed.
I just never came
What did they direct?
That's awesome.
They directed something called Gong Tai, Robot Carnival. They had a segment, and they also directed Manga
They directed something called
Seki.
Robot Carnival?
Yes, Manga Sekai Mushi Bishish. I don't know what this is. Animated adaptation of a fairy tale and folklores from around the world. I guess it was a TV thing. Yeah, they had a 30-minute segment. But yeah, they did something for Robot Carnival. That's nice. And they did key animation and a lot of stuff. Metropolis. Nothing that's blowing me away. Just
Nothing
movies from the 90s and
crazy.
2000s. Their last thing was Harmony. They were the key animator in Harmony, a 2015 anime. So as far as I know, they're still around doing stuff.
Nice.
What they're known for is those four things. Oh, they were the lead animator on Space Adventure Cobra. I guess that is a old school anime that people would like. And Venus Wars, which, again, something I don't remember seeing, but I probably know a little bit about. That was Clouds. There's not much to say, but there was clouds in it, and shit happened.
Yeah, there's clouds. Things happen in
Our
the clouds. And then
our next
eventually a
segment-
nuclear bomb goes off, quote unquote.
Our next segment, for my note, is called A Tale of Two Robots. And for my notes, I'm going to say it was the most
They're not
anime
robots.
of it, if I want to call it. I'm just going to say
it's
it was
definitely the most anime.
most anime. But Livid's note says, goofy ass accent fights Englishman. Would you like to... Oh, wait, Okay, would you like to give us some notes about that?
The last one is not part of this one, but
Yeah,
yeah. So, goofy ass accent. The accent is not good. It's just like, imagine an English voice faking or like doing a Asian accent or whatever as they're talking.
One of the people.
Yeah, like all of them. All of them have it to some degree. Some of the characters have it worse than others.
Some are very cartoony.
Yeah.
And some are trying to do a Japanese Asian accent.
Yeah.
Some of them I think there's like, oh, this is a nerdy, freaky, geeky guy, so I'm just gonna be all like whiny sounding. But
and then they keep calling the dude that they're fighting a Westerner.
yeah,
Like,
because he is from the Western.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
I
I
think he's English. Like he doesn't have an English accent. He has an American accent, but
do you want what the story synopsis?
sure. I want to know the story synopsis because this, like, if you watch it, it is just so weird.
It's the most anime.
Like, where does he come from? This guy just shows up and starts like destroying the town.
It feels very 90s anime, more modernized anime,
Yeah.
where you got the perviness, the jokes, all that stuff.
does,
but
yeah,
it was
it
more
kinda has-
lighthearted. It was more lighthearted, but it did have all that.
It has it
But
all.
here it is.
The story has it all.
It says the Meiji period, which is the early 1900s. It says set in the 19th century, Japan, a Western invader, and his giant robot attempts to take over Japan, but is challenged by locals operating a Japanese giant robot created by parade tricks. And how would you describe this without people knowing that these pretty much it's a mech fight? It's two mechs fighting, but it's early,
set in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
but everything runs off of like wood, steampunk, coal, things like that. It's very mechish, very woodish.
It is wood.
It's prehistoric Power Rangers. That's how I described it. I think, right? I said this is because they have little horns that you can yell through, and they're like, listen to this, listen to that.
Yeah. The Western guy, he was just by himself in his mech, but in the other one,
Running off
it
a
was
bunch of batteries.
Yeah, it was a bunch of
batteries, which I was trying to question when batteries were first invented, because he had a bunch of weird lemon-looking battery type things.
yeah, it was like through barrels and shit.
I don't know how exactly the dub compares to the Japanese version, but the English guy yelling, the bad villain guy, awesome. I liked how he sounded. He just sounded like a cool bad guy. It's great.
You
The
liked his
people on the
voice? Well,
he
you know what? I
sound
remember you telling me
he
that while we were watching it.
he because he just sounds like a fucking villain. Like he just sounds
He
like a
just
kooky
sounds,
villain.
yeah, he's
And
really,
then
he's like,
he's the best of all the actors, right?
yeah,
Yes,
I'll give
that's
him
what I'm
that.
saying.
He's really
Yes.
putting his all into it because he's like, he's doing the wackiest sort of voice.
Everyone else is weird.
Yeah, he's got
The
the
chick
energy.
voicing the girl, I don't know what she was, but the girl and the guy just like each other because they were fighting. And honestly, the best of the voices on that side, on the Japanese side, was probably that weird geeky guy because he just sounded like how he looked, but everyone else was doing a very thick accent of some sort or doing a
Little
voice like
geeky guy.
yeah.
I thought he had.
It was
like
the guy with the circle glasses,
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
I know.
people in the Japanese.
He
yeah,
just had
pretty
like
much
the
that.
thickest of the like fake accents or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It was. Yeah.
And that was a Tell 2 Robots. It's fun. It's interesting. It's a cool little watch. I think.
It's a cool watch.
I don't.
Not my favorite,
I don't.
but it's a cool watch.
Yeah, yeah. It was fun to watch. That person who directed that, they directed Roshan Z, which is 1991, which I believe is another sci-fi-esque movie. They worked on Akira. A lot of people that worked on the film worked on Akira, and I don't know if Akira was made by the same studio, APPPA, but I don't believe it was. But they all worked on Akira. That's probably where the concept for the film kind of came from. No, this film is before that, isn't it? This film was 1980. Yes, this film was made before Akira, but all these people worked on Akira at some point.
Oh,
And this
I'm
This
guessing
director
then
also worked on
after
Blood, the
this,
Last
they
Vampire.
all, like, were hired to work on Akira. That's interesting.
he worked. He directed Manga Entertainment: The Art of Anime in 2005. He was the director of Blood, the Last Vampire in 2000. That is probably the first segment of Blood Plus. If anyone knows that
Blood.
anime or
Wait
Blood
a
C, it's the original.
Wait a
It-
minute.
You know
Do
Blood,
I?
the Last Vampire. Yes, it's a very artistic piece film, but it's where the Japanese girl
Sounds
works for
amazing.
the U.S. government, and they go around and she kills Cropterans.
You know
Yes.
what?
Mm-hmm.
There was a series also called Blood.
Yes, Blood Plus, and then Blood
Okay.
C. Yes. He worked on that. He worked on Robot Carnival, like we know. He also
I know I have the
directed Golden
DVD
Boy,
for one of these.
and he directed the JoJo Bizarre Adventure in 1993. He also directed that. So this director has done a lot in the 90s. I guess that was their seance, I guess you call it. It is Hiroki Kitsakabu. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. You guys can go ban me later, but yeah, that's that director.
Yeah, remember to
And
find
what was
them in
our-
the comments for that.
And then our last segment is the one we talked about a lot already. It was the ending segment called Nightmare. It was the Ichabod Crane stuff. It was all based to be like Fantasia type film. And the notes we have for that is Goofy Little Robot Guy.
Goofy
Is there
little
anything
robot
you
guy.
wanna
So,
say about that segment?
if you want me to be honest, I started falling asleep right around this time.
You're
It was
sleepy.
it was late at night. It was like 2:30ish. It was getting close to like 2 something. And I don't know why I've been so tired lately, but I was starting to sort of doze off during the story, so I didn't catch what happened, which really sucks because now that I'm awake, I'm realizing this was one of the most interesting of the
Yeah, it was, and-
stories. And I like
yeah, guys,
fucking
this
missed
worst
out on
podcast
it.
ever. We didn't even watch the whole movie. He fell asleep at the end of the movie.
Yeah,
Sucks.
I'm a bad host. Dang.
He's a
I
bad. He's a bad person ever.
I,
But
it's
okay,
weird
since
'cause
you're falling,
I caught the very ending, like the ending.
so I can't ask you what the film was about because you just. Well, I told you what it was about already.
Like
because it's
it was
Fantasia.
like from what you told me, and also like from the bits and pieces that I remember seeing, it really was sort of like
Yeah.
the headless horseman chasing Ichabod through a giant city.
Which that segment's called. What is that called? It's called Nightmare, but for some reason, I guess for the English version, because right here they have it down as that in Japanese, but in English it's called Chicken Man and Redneck.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Even on the Crunchyroll one?
No. This is what that segment's called in English for some reason, but it is called Nightmare. It says, I'll give you the synopsis and tell me if this is what you remember seeing. The city of Tokyo is overrun by machines, turned into robots, of all shapes and sizes. I didn't realize that part. By robotic magician, the titled
I did not know it was Tokyo.
Redneck. They all come alive for a night, a revivery, with only one single drunken human, Chicken Man, awakes to witness it. So apparently at night, everything turns into robot shapes, even the buildings and stuff. Which they don't specify this, but the art style for the buildings kind of reminds me of the opening and ending credits, and I like to believe that what they did is they all got together and then they slowly formed the robot carnival from that segment. Apparently it's not related at all, but I feel like that became the robot carnival, and the robot carnival went running through town destroying it, and then it ended up in the middle of the desert. But yeah,
I was kind of convinced that it was related to that too.
That's what I thought, because you kept saying these buildings look familiar, and that's what I was thinking, but maybe just...
Okay, so earlier in the film, there's a similar looking building. Like at the very end where they zoom out and Chicken Man, I guess, is on that building like that. If you go back to the Toyman one, Presents, there is a shot where they are zoomed out and he's like going to work or whatever, and it also has very similar buildings there. So I thought, okay, is this the same place, or is it just like, I don't know, it's a very similar city, I guess.
Yeah. If I remember, this might be the one, if I remember correctly. Okay, this person who directed a segment, if I remember, he directed Genius Party in 2007, and he directed this segment in Robot Carnival. But that's his two previous things. And if that is not the director, then yeah, it's a film that some people know. I'm trying to look real quick because I don't know if we skipped over something.
I feel like that's vaguely familiar.
The person who directed Akira, what did he do? Okay, the person who directed Akira, as far as I know, he wrote Akira, directed Akira, worked on Memories as a writer. He did do something in here, and I'm trying to figure out what it was. Let's see, all. Well, under director, he has Akira, and he did do something. Oh, he did a segment. Okay, so the opening and ending segment, apparently he did some of the work for. He on Robot Carnival, so the opening and ending is done. So the opening and ending of this film is done by Otomo, which is the director of Akira. He directed Akira.
Nice.
And he worked on Memories. He wrote Steam Boy. He was a writer for a few other films, but pretty well known man. He's done a lot of stuff since then. He apparently, I think he's working on something recently based off that. I'm not sure, but he did the screenplay for Metropolis. He wrote the screenplay for that. So all these people have done stuff around each other. Ronin Z, that was directed by another person in this segment. He was a writer on that. He did the manga for Memories. He did the segments 1, 2, and 3, and he worked on that as a writer and stuff. So that's all that for that film. And if I remember correctly, for Robot Carnival.
I was gonna say we didn't do the. Did you want to do like the very ending?
We're doing the ending. Yeah, we're gonna get there. I'm just saying this is what all these directors worked on. So the ending, as I said, was directed by the guy that worked on Akira. That's probably why it's just a sick ass fucking ending, and probably why he didn't do much besides the opening ending is Akira came out like a year later, so he probably was working his ass off on that.
Yeah.
But the final segment of the film, which you put down as no notes, so I'm gonna take that as the movie just ended.
Yeah. For the ending, there's only one thing I wanted to like mildly say something about.
Are we talking about like the ending credits or the post scene? Because those are two separate scenes technically.
You know what? This is part of the post scene. Never mind.
Because segment 9 says ending. The robot carnival is stopped by a dune in the desert. Unable to climb the sandy obstruction, the carnival stalls at its base, and it ends up breaking. I guess it uses too much steam or whatever. It breaks, it destroys, it falls apart, and that's the ending segment. So you saw the robot carnival come in, and it dies in the middle of the desert after it destroyed that town.
Yep.
And it's on the ground, it's destroyed, and then
you do get that segment of the like flashback segments for the carnival of it in its heyday or whatever.
When people would go to the robot carnival and watch the robot carnival do its thing, and they would sit in there and scream, because when you see it in the opening, you hear that music, like people going yeah, because they're excited for the robot carnival.
Yeah.
And that, or I don't know if they specify that rich people are inside the robot carnival, whatnot. I don't know, but then that thing becomes sentient. It becomes a giant thing, and then at the end, after it's killed people, it like pauses, it blows up, it dies, it does all that horrible shit. It ends, and then it shows the credits, which we saw. There's a credit where it shows it in its heyday, and the credit shows drawings of how amazing the robot carnival stuff was. It just looks really sick. And in the English version, just shows sketches of all the art from different parts of the film, which is still pretty cool, but it's probably not as cool as giving you more story to the robot carnival.
I like the more story one, if I'm going to be completely honest.
Yeah, I would say that too. But then, if I didn't know to keep clicking, there's a post-credit scene, which in the English version is played right after. It shows the robot carnival destroyed, goes black, comes back, shows the ending, then we get the credits. But for us, it ends, you watch the credits, and then just like modern day with post-credit scenes, which isn't very common back then, we get a post-credit scene. Do you want to explain a little bit of what it is?
So the post-credit scene is they find some guy in the desert, and he's led to the people from the beginning of the movie. There's one hut out sort of by itself, and this guy is led back to their home, and he has a little silver orb looking thing, and he like shows it off to the kids, and it like opens up and it starts playing with one of the like doll robot things from earlier in the film. And of course, you know, you saw what they did in the beginning of the film, so the thing explodes. And
it pretty much is a small version of the dancing ballerina that you see in a robot carnival. And it plays, and they're amazed, and it starts to get closer and gets played, and they all lean into it, and then it zooms out and it shows the hut, and the hut these are the same people from the opening scene of the movie, and it explodes, and they all die, and they all die, and then that movie ends, and that was pretty much the whole film of Robot Carnival, pretty much.
Yeah.
Besides,
when it explodes, it literally just says "end." I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Because I had like one or two things possibly.
I know. We wanted to give like our scores and what we would rate this movie but what were the things that you were gonna say?
So what I want to talk about is like I guess I missed this point, but this, so things I didn't point out was the music was done by Joe Hisaishi, which is known for working for Studio Ghibli. He's done at least Hayao Miyazaki. He's done I think all his films to date for his music, and you can hear it in there. The music is phenomenal. I think the music in the scene that we like most, Presence, right? Is that the one we like?
Yeah, I would say Presence is probably
phenomenal.
I would say it's my favorite.
It's all good. It's all good, but Presence is a masterpiece.
It really it does stand out above the rest. I won't lie.
It's very 80s. That's the part that I didn't get across real quick for like the older segments, because I wanted to bring this up in the 80s. The one where the two girls are dating the guy or whatever type thing. Yeah. There's sound effects in there that remind me of Sailor Moon and stuff, and it's just this 80s sound effects of like the little teardrop sounds, little rain.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is very 80s.
I really love that.
Yeah, it just very old school sound. I love it, and I forgot to point out it was Joe Hisaishi who did all that. If I'm saying his name correctly, but he did all the Ghibli, Hayao Miyazaki music. We forgot to talk about that part, but I want to do to end our segment because we are running long, and in the future we'll try to work around this stuff and make our podcast a little bit better for you guys. But I do think we want to rate
It'll be
our scores
more
of what we think of the film.
A little more refined.
Yeah, we're just working around this stuff right now, but I guess do you want to give it a score? Do you have a score you want to give it?
So we were wanting to do it out of 100, right?
Yeah.
I would
Overall,
say
what do you think of the film overall, more or less? You liked most of it?
overall, I would
Yeah.
definitely, I think I'd recommend it to people, especially if they like older anime and art style like that. I would definitely be like, hey, you should try watching this. Some of the
Yeah.
stories are like kind of
Mhm.
non-compelling, but honestly, if you sit down and watch it, I think you'd like it, right?
Yeah.
So if I had
So
to,
do you have a score?
yeah, if I had to do it out of 100, I think I'd put it at like a 78,
Mm.
like a
78.
78 or an 80.
Gotcha. Um. So what I would do is, I look at the film as in a whole as I liked pretty much all of it. Even the segments I might like say like the Frankenstein one, which isn't as great. I did like it, and if I went back to watch it, like this isn't a film I don't think I would go back and watch a bunch of times, but maybe that one segment I do love that presence segment a lot. I just gotta lay that down.
Yeah,
That segment when I saw the segment, I thought this was the greatest film ever at the moment.
yeah,
But
you
even
gotta
in the
hammer that
lows,
in.
which is like the Frankenstein scene, and even the dating scene where he ends up in a robot, I still gotta like that because I fucking love '80s stuff,
Yeah,
like especially
that
Japanese
one
like
was
80. It's very city
definitely
pop.
80s
It was
thing.
very city pop. That's the
Yeah,
sound I was trying to get across. But overall, how I would rate it, because I don't. Because so the film has a 7 out of 10, a 7.2 out of 10 on my anime list, and I think it has a 6.8 on IMDb, and I can see that because it's like it's not the greatest film ever made, it's not the worst film ever made, but more or less I like to like to say it was a pretty damn good film because I guess it just was I think it's one of the Japanese films that like I just think
yeah,
it's just classics. Like if you want to see what Japanese animation culture is, you should watch it
yeah.
very much. I'm gonna say I want to give it. Oh God, because I feel like anything in the 80s and 90s I have to rewatch, and I want to say.
I know I'll definitely be rewatching.
What did you give it? You give it a.
You,
What did you give it?
I
You
said
gave it a
78, but
70.
I might just bump it up to like a solid 80.
Okay, you give it a solid 80. To
Yeah.
me, an 80 is something I would have to rewatch, but I did love that segment a lot, and I would probably say overall, I'm gonna give the film a. I'm gonna give it a. I'm gonna give it a solid 79. I'm gonna give it a
Fair.
solid 79. So, with our scores together, what would that be? That would be.
Yeah, whatever, like an average calculator would be.
Yeah.
Honestly, the average
So
would probably just be like
the average is
79 or 80.
79.5. So for
Alright.
anyone wanting to watch this film, it's a 79.5. It's really good.
At least
Now,
according to us.
yeah. And if you guys want, in the future, we might do a little like post podcast things. I don't know how any of that stuff's gonna work, but maybe we'll do a thing later on when we're doing other podcasts. If you guys want, we'll bring this back up real quick, and maybe we'll just quickly rate each segment because more or less, if I wanted to, I think that present segment to me is a solid 90.
Yeah,
Is
that
honestly
that
a
is
solid
a solid
90.
90.
The
Like a
The
95
Frankenstein
or
one,
something.
the Frankenstein story is a solid 70. So if you take the average of that 70 and that 90, you're just gonna get our 80 pretty much. That's how I would describe it. Like if I were to give that a 70 and then the other one I would give it a 90. I believe the average is 75. See what I mean? But we give it a little bit higher because all the segments are pretty damn good. Maybe this is how I felt in the moment on certain segments, but overall, great film.
Yeah,
79.5.
like maybe on a
We recommend
rewatch
you
you
go
might
watch
feel
it.
a little different, but yeah, I would definitely recommend it
This
to
is a
people.
test episode, so I don't know if it's going out. But if you're listening to hearing me say this now, then that means we released it.
Yep.
And if you guys want to give us feedback, tell us what you liked about it, what you didn't. I know it's running a little long, but like, is there things we should cut out? Was the humor? We do have a little bit of humor to our telling, and I guess that wasn't coming off too clean because I was kind of trying to be in control mode, where it's like,
No,
let's
I
get
get
to
it.
this point, let's get to this point. But it'd be cool to be more chill. That's why I don't know if like we get to a point where we can have someone produce for us so they can have all the facts, and
Yeah.
then me and Livid can just crack our jokes, but
We'll crack our jokes.
not really crack jokes, but like just be more calm because I did feel like I had to like we got to do this in a certain way, and even
No, I
with
get
my
it.
control or like trying to like segment this out for you guys, we're still at like an hour and 24 minutes, and
Which
if we were
isn't
just
bad. That's not like a
nonchalantly,
super. That's not
No.
like too long. I don't think.
but if I didn't have any control without the facts and just going around without like some type of sheet work to base it off of, this would easily been a 2-hour podcast, because my old podcast would be roughly 2 hours. So we did save some amount of time. But is there anything else you want to say? Any points you want to make before we end our podcast?
No, I think everything I wanted to talk about has been said. So
All right,
it's
all right.
more or less like
So
if we release this
yeah.
one, just I don't know, like, comment, share.
we'll try to have an
I don't
opening.
know
Maybe we'll
what
have
is
some
going on.
free music and make an opening, and we'll have an outro. Probably like right now when I'm saying goodbye, we'll have like
Yeah.
little outro music. But yeah, I just wanna. I don't know if it's pointless to say, but like, comment, subscribe. I don't know where this is going.
That's what
It's
I
a
was
funny
thinking.
thing to say,
Yeah,
but
like,
apparently I
comment,
hear that's really
subscribe,
bad. That doesn't work. But
rate,
if you like
I don't
this,
know.
guys, and you're listening to it, go give it 5 stars on all the podcast sites you listen to, because you know the 5 stars gets us to the front page. More people listen to us, we can make more content, stuff like that. And if we get big enough, we'll have ads. I know you guys like it, but we'll have little ads in between, and then
We'll have sponsors
and then
ads
we'll
or something.
yes, and we'll keep talking about the anime that we love. This was our test episode. We do want to do Ghibli stuff in the future, but this has been the Animation Upload podcast starring Lost in.
Unlimited.
Thank you very much for coming to our podcast, and I want you all to have a wonderful day, and that has been that.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.